2,000 years later, and I finally have the Anbernic RG Cube, and I can do an actual review on it. It has been a roller coaster of a release for the Cube, from the pre-release marketing hype on it, to the not-so-great release with the light bleed issues, to the finished product, which actually is quite nice. Let's do a review on the Cube, Anbernic's latest. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Joey's Retro Handhelds. I'm Joey, and today we're going to be doing a review on the Anbernic RG Cube. I don't think this is going to be a long one. This is one of those releases where they nail pretty much everything they're going for, and it is a great device, competently made and all of that, but it just doesn't speak to me or really do anything for me personally. Still a very easy recommendation though. They really did well here. So let's talk about the important bits around this device. Now the big selling point around this device is the 1:1 aspect ratio 720p screen, which makes this a really good choice for Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Pico 8, and other certain systems that take advantage of a 1:1 screen. But it's also not terrible for 4:3 content. It basically mimics a 3.4-inch screen if it was a 4:3 device, so it's similar there. I think any fans of the Powkiddy RGB30 or the RGB20SX know what to expect from a 1:1 device, although this is a lot more powerful than those are. But it's also a lot more expensive. The Cube is $146 shipped through GoGameGeek, and that's using my 15% off code through them. So overall, from a gaming standpoint, it makes really good use of the 1:1 screen, and with the power that it has access to a bunch of different stuff that we didn't have on the RGB30 or the 20SX, like Nintendo DS with retro achievements or 3DS and so on. This is kind of the premium Powkiddy RGB30 experience, except you're running Android and a lot more power, plus a lot of things just work, like the D-pad and battery and all that. So if that's how you want to see it, that is exactly what this is, but you're going to be paying for it. One thing spec-wise that I do want to mention is that it does support video out through the USB-C port. However, you can't charge at the same time. So if you find a dock that does video out and charging, it's not going to work. So you kind of have to choose one. It's either charging or video out. And this is the same bug that happens on the RG556. Doing a bit of a tour here, and the first thing that I noticed out of the box is that the plastic felt pretty cheap. I think this is the first time that I can remember of any Anbernic device that I own where I finally understand what people mean when they say some plastic is cheap. This is an example of that, and I don't know what it is about it. I don't know why it's different, any of that, but it really does feel kind of dollar store, McDonald's Happy Meal style plastic. And this could just be my lizard brain, and it could be the exact same as the other plastic on other devices, but for some reason it just doesn't feel that way. Now, what surprised me is how comfortable this is. It has nice extended grips built in, and it feels nice in a claw sort of grip if you're using the stick, or a little less close to the device if you're using the D-pad, which I think they made a little bit of a mistake here, and I think for this device specifically, the D-pad needed to be top. However, the D-pad is kind of the standout, and it's easy to be the standout when the sticks are just awful. The sticks here are the same sticks as the RG556, which means they have the same issues with snapping to each cardinal direction. Thankfully, the D-pad kind of makes up for all of that, and it's a really good D-pad, although it is a bit stiff and hard when you first get it. Either way, I kind of find myself using the D-pad a lot more than the sticks. The rest of it all feels fine. The buttons, the triggers, and all of that are serviceable. Nice analog triggers here as well, and everything just feels normal. Jumping back to the T820 processor now and the power of this device, and for those unfamiliar with it, it means that you're very well set for performance all the way up to GameCube and PlayStation 2, meaning all of your PlayStation 1 games and systems before that play perfectly. And honestly, it might be the value proposition for this device to just get it for Game Boy and Game Boy Color and the DS's, which we'll talk about later, because of how awesome they look on here. But you have so much more power than that. Nintendo 64 and Sega Dreamcast are great here as well, which isn't a surprise for the processor, and for 4:3 content, like I mentioned before, it is roughly equivalent to a 3.4-inch screen. That's likely the hang-up for a lot of people. And while there's a ton of better ways to play 4x3 content, you can easily do so here with this power. With this screen, you can also get Nintendo DS to look pretty great on here as well. And compared to the Powkiddy RGB30 or the 20SX, we have Android here, and we have enough power that we can run the Melon DS standalone app. And that lets you earn retro achievements as well, while having the screen basically be perfect for DS. Now, PSP is something that I wouldn't bother with at all. Actually, any 16:9 content I wouldn't even bother with. It's very squished and it's a 1x1 screen, so it doesn't look great for 16:9 content. Personal preference here, but it's just not something that I would buy it for. You might be wondering about Nintendo 3DS, and it runs pretty well enough. There's some usual stutters that have to do with shader compilation, and there's the usual compatibility issues with some 3DS games, but otherwise, yeah, you can easily run at least native resolution for pretty much every game, and in a lot of games you can bump them up to a higher resolution if you want. It's a great way to play 3DS, the same way that it's good for DS. Now, the cap for performance on the T820 is going to be GameCube, Wii, and PlayStation 2. On the GameCube end, this is a good GameCube device, and outside of some small tweaks for some games, you can easily play a ton of the library, just out of the box without issue. The same goes for Wii, which goes hand in hand with GameCube. We've seen everything this device can do already thanks to the RG556. So none of this is a surprise. PS2, as usual, is a different beast. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's bad for PS2, as the library for PS2 is massive. But I'd say that overall you're going to be doing some tweaking here and there for a lot of the PS2 games, especially the ones that you want to run. I wouldn't personally buy this for PS2 if you're asking my opinion. Let's talk about the issues with the Cube, and the big one with a bullet is the cardinal snapping issue on the sticks. The sticks are the same ones from the RG556. They have the same exact issue, which means they snap to each cardinal direction, and it makes playing games just an absolute chore with these sticks. I can't do it. It's very difficult. But thankfully, thanks to the community, Gamma has already come up with a fix for this, and you can apply the fix now, but personally I would wait for the full Gamma OS release, which will include that fix. And basically it'll have a whole bunch more of other upgrades doing Anbernic's job for them, because we have gotten to that point where Anbernic just does not care anymore, and we just keep fixing their problems. Second on the list of issues, and probably a bigger one for most people, is you should know that this device has a big light bleed issue. And it was so big that Anbernic had to recall some review units and then ship out new ones and all that sort of thing. But the general idea is we don't know how many were shipped out to resellers and customers because we've seen a lot of retail units have this. And so, here is my recommendation. I fully expect that this is going to disappear in a month or two, and we won't hear this anymore, at least in rare cases. But if you're going to look at buying this, I would make sure to reach out to whichever reseller or company or anything like that. Ask them what batch they have, make sure it isn't one with the light bleed issue, and also find out what the return policy is, because if they lie and you get one with light bleed, and especially with how bad the light bleed issues have been on this, you're going to want to return it and get an exchange. So just keep that in mind. Be very careful with the issues with this device, because that is just a hardware issue that when you're spending $150, it's unacceptable. Now, I've seen some comments defending this. There is no defense for this. Anbernic would have caught this if they weren't rushing this device out to compete with the Unicorn, which still hasn't even released yet, so they could have taken their time. But they were rushing this out to beat that to market. And so when you rush things out, you miss things. And especially when you're releasing a device a month, you miss a lot more things. This could have been prevented if they had any sort of quality assurance or quality control at all. Third and lowest issue on my list is some Android apps don't play well with the 1x1 screen. And the biggest example that affects me personally and actually really bothers me is folder sync. This is how folder sync looks on this device, and it is basically unusable. Now, this is 100% a concern with the developer and just how they developed this app to maybe not just be as responsive as you expect, but I fully expect they probably didn't think that anybody would be using a 1x1 aspect ratio screen, so they didn't really develop for it. But either way, just know that there could be some apps like this that just aren't going to look good or work well on here. And Folder Sync, unfortunately, is an app that I really need, especially for Android and syncing saves, and you can't get it to look good here. Outside of that, I haven't run into any other real deal breakers with this. This is a competently made device. It's comfortable, it's got power, it's got good battery, and all of that. It is a decently made device, but it just doesn't do anything for me specifically. And that doesn't mean it's not going to be an easy recommendation for a lot of people, but if you're asking my opinion, it's not something that I would have grabbed, or even knowing now, I'm probably not going to use it really at all. But like I said, it is competently made and it does everything that it sets out to do with a 1:1 aspect ratio screen. So it puts it ahead of 99% of other devices that just release in a broken state, especially once you get past the sticks and the light bleed and all of that sort of thing. But I still think it is kind of a niche purchase. I would spend $15 more and grab the RG556, which has a 16:9 screen, OLED, a lot more content that you can play on there, and you're not limited by a 1:1 aspect ratio screen and all of that. But obviously it's a lot bigger. So this is smaller. I'm not going to say it's pocketable because I don't think it is, but it's more portable, definitely. I just think the 556 is a better all-around device compared to this, which is a bit more niche in scope. But if you like the 1:1 screen, but you weren't a fan of the Powkiddy RGB30 or the 20SX, weren't a fan of the D-pad on them, the battery, all that sort of thing, then this is that premium experience. This is a better version of that. Although, like I said, you're going to be paying a lot more for this. I think with Gamma OS coming to both the 556 and the Cube, you can't go wrong with either of them, really. But I think for most people, they're just going to go for the 556 because it's just a better all-around device. And this, you really have to know what you want if you're going for this over the 556. And personally, I wouldn't do that. And so that's going to be it for this one. Don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow. Come join me on the Discord to talk about all of these retro handhelds. Support me on Patreon if you like my stuff. And hope you all have a good one.